Hi, and welcome back to my channel. Today I have a short video, different style than I've done, and also slightly different filming location, trying some new things out. Another thing that comes up in reading is the idea of DNFing, or did not finishing. Doesn't really work to, it works to use the acronym as a verb or a gerund, but not the whole phrase. Be that as it may, the idea of not finishing a book can become controversial. And it's not something that I do a lot. Some people do. They are what they call mood readers. They're not feeling a book, they stop, they set it aside, they come back to it later. I have never really been that kind of a reader. Never really done that with anything in general. There's only 2 books that I can remember never finishing. That includes a book that was on that list for years, and then I just went, okay, fine, I'll finish it. I hated it, but I felt good that I finished it. And that book was Lord of the Flies. I just didn't like it. Okay, the other 2 books that I have DNF'd, I did so for very similar reasons. Those 2 books are Lolita and The Casual Vacancy. When I started Lolita, I was on a kick where I wanted to be able to say that if a book was a classic, I've read it. And I started reading it, and I didn't have the physical book. I had it as a library copy on my iPad. And I started reading it on my lunch break at work and just got creeped out immediately. The whole vibe of that book, if you know anything about it, I'm not going to bother talking about it here. The whole vibe of that book was something that I just thought, no, I don't want to spend my time reading this. And that was only maybe 10 pages in. I don't even know if I got that far. With The Casual Vacancy, as I've mentioned before, I love Harry Potter. I have an entire shelf, soon to be more, of Harry Potter books. I love it. I think J.K. Rowling has a great writing style. So when she came out with her first adult fiction, I thought, oh, I'm gonna like this book. And so I picked it up from the library and I started reading it, and it just was disgusting. It felt like she was trying to, oh, this is not a kid's book anymore. I can be as filthy as I want to and pretend that I'm in the head of a hormonal, sex-obsessed teenage boy. As a grown woman, that's not a place that I want to be, so I DNF'd it. Other than those 3 books, and one of them I did finish eventually, I can't remember any other books that I've DNF'd. Now, if you were to look at my Goodreads page, I have, unfortunately, hundreds of books that I have rated 1 star. For me, if a book earns 1 star, it's really not worthy of much, if anything. I don't generally rate books 1 star that have structural quality to them unless they have just so many other problems that you can't look over it. But I have a lot of 1 star books. I keep reading. I don't stop reading them. I have a really hard time DNFing. A lot of times, the reasons that people give for DNFing, hey, they're great. Let's say they're mood readers and they're just not in the mood for a book. So why would they torture themselves with a particular book if they're just not in the mood for it? Hey, I get it. When I talk to my students and my students say, oh, I hate reading, I tell them, oh, it's just because you haven't found a book that you like. And often that happens in education where there are certain books that we have to read and we can't work around that, or we have to force the kids to read the book and they don't like it. And there's so many times where they read books and they don't like it and it's torture and it's a slog, so it's no wonder that they don't like reading. But for me, it's not that I don't think that it doesn't apply to me. One of the things that I do, because I know that I have such a hard time DNFing books, is I try to be a lot more selective about the books that I read. I try to go into a book knowing a lot about it, or at least knowing how other people have felt about the book or experienced the reading of the book. I try not to add things to my TBR unless I am fairly certain they won't be another book like Lolita or The Casual Vacancy. I think about that and I go, I have almost 800 books on my TBR and it grows more often than it shrinks. I'm not a mood reader. There's nothing wrong with being a mood reader, but I think I'm just too much of a list person, someone that's driven by achievement and accomplishment, that even if I dislike a book, it doesn't put me off reading to finish it. In fact, I almost get more from finishing a book I didn't like than if I had left off halfway through, because then I can look back and think, oh, I finished it. I slogged through and I finished it. Is that good? I don't think you can put a judgment on that, say if it's good or bad. Now, if I have goals to get through a certain number of books during the school year, and I don't put aside a book that it's taking me a while to get through, well, that hinders how many books I can read that month because I have a limited amount of time. We have the same 24 hours in a day. So part of me sometimes thinks maybe I should become better at DNFing books. Maybe I should get to the point where I think, you know what, this isn't worth it. It's taking up too much time from other books. At the same time, if I had used that this past month of August, I probably would have set aside And the Show Went On and the Biography of Russia book, because they just took so long and it just wasn't, I kept falling asleep and other things like that. But at the same time, if I had set them aside, I wouldn't be able to count them as read, and I would look at those books and I wouldn't want to return them, and I'd keep renewing them until finally I couldn't renew them and then just turn them back, and then I'd want to finish them. And for me, once I get past a certain point, I feel like I've already invested enough time to make slogging through to the finish worth it. The only reason that I might consider DNFing more is because I want to get to those really good books. I genuinely love reading. The feeling of reading a good book and getting lost in a book, there is nothing better. There's absolutely nothing better. I love using my time right before I go to bed, which is one of my reading times. I love it when the book is one that I like and I genuinely enjoy. And I feel slightly regretful that I'm falling asleep as I'm reading this, even though my purpose in reading before bed is to get my brain to calm down. But my brain calms down better if it's a book that I like and enjoy. I want to get to so many of these books. I want to get to more books. DNFing books that aren't worth it would probably help me get there. But at the same time, I'm really driven by getting the numbers in. The number of books that I read. I love being able to say, I read more than 200 books this year. Haven't yet. I'm only at 140 something, but for a lot of people that's like, you've read how many books? And of those, maybe 10% are 5-star reads and another 15 to 20% are 4-star reads. And most people will be like, it's not worth my time if it's not a 4 or a 5-star read. I still get enough satisfaction from reading those books and consuming that information that I am not yet driven to become a reader who DNFs books. So I had thought that this fall I was going to try to do that more, but I think I'm going to turn my energy more towards picking the books wisely and being able to look at the book, look at my TBR, and be able to weed through and take out books that I know are going to be a snooze fest. So should you DNF? Should you not DNF? I guess that's not really the point of this video. I guess this video is just me talking and processing through my process for DNFing. Because honestly, what I tell my students is after 10 pages, if they're not into it, don't keep reading. I guess maybe I should start taking my own advice.